Second one is understanding your spouse, because just as you are really complex, so is your spouse. And the main error that I will see people just slamming into time and time again is they will take what their spouse says at face value. Your spouse will say, I hate your guts. What do you think? Oh, she hates my guts. Your spouse will say, I love you, but I'm not in love with you. What do you think? Oh, she doesn't love me. Your spouse will say, I need time, or I need space. Oh, I should, fuck off out of here. All the things that they say are a representation of how they've been able to rationalize their feelings and how they've been able to vocalize them. They are not what is going on inside of them. Because just as you have all of these layers of complexity, that the real reason that you're doing something is like 3 or 4 layers deep, so is theirs.
Andre, what does it mean when somebody says, I love you, but I'm not in love with you?
There's so much meaning behind it, and people tend to take everything that the spouse says at face value. And so they will take that to mean like, give up. There's nothing that you can do. My feelings have switched off. And this is a very common thing. Like, we look at feelings as like this magical thing that is bred in the ether. It's the stars aligning. And we take our agency like completely out of it. So then what happens is the spouse is going to say something like, I love you, but I'm not in love with you. And our world shatters because, oh my God, this thing is happening to me. I am completely helpless in this situation. My spouse's feelings have just switched off, and there's nothing I can do. That is very, very far from the truth. Love in itself is a very complex feeling. There's a lot of emotions that are wrapped up in that statement. And one of the big ones is there's a lot of resentment that's built up. There's a lack of hope that has over time been developing in the spouse. And it becomes like a very black filter that even if there is love, there's so much resentment and there's so much lack of hope that the love that exists gets completely dimmed out. In the event that it is absolutely true that there is no love, because that can also happen, that is still not a definitive thing. Like, when you met your wife, you didn't love her. Well, maybe you did, but usually sane people don't fall in love straight away. The whole like love at first sight, there's no such thing. There's passion at first sight, but love has to develop over time. So when we develop love, we are the proof of concept that we can go from no love to a lot of love. And for some reason, we don't do the math, the internal math of, oh, if my spouse currently doesn't love me, then all I need to do is the same things that I did that got them to go from no love to a lot of love. There are switches that we can flip, and there's a whole process that has to happen in the brain. But all of this they are just communicating right now. This is just feedback. This is where I'm at with my feelings. And we take it as a very final thing. We take it as give up. No, it's not. It's just, this is where I'm at. This is what I need help with. Even if they're not phrasing it that way, even if they're very upset and they're very angry, they're very tense, they're very resentful, they're going to say it almost like a die in a ditch kind of way. And that is not the most helpful way of looking at it. That is them responding to their feelings. That resentment that they're saying, I love you, but I'm not in love with you. They could be saying that in a more compassionate way. They could be saying that in a very mean way. And all that is another layer of feedback of where they are at emotionally. And that shouldn't be taken as the definitive place that this is what you have to take and give up.
Yeah, it could be their reaction. They maybe lack certain tools or abilities to kind of express the certain feelings and emotions that they're having. And this is their understanding of how to try to communicate what's going on internally. You know, we had a great podcast with Dawn Massler Biggie. She had a TED Talk that went super viral. I think it's 5-6+ million views at this point. She talks about the science of how our brain falls in love and how there's this kind of 2-year, 4-stage process that the brain goes through from kind of a neurophysiological, neurochemical approach. And I think what we're going to do is maybe look at it through a more rationalistic, mathematical. I love that you talked about the mathematics side of things. I think that's where we'll kind of, be able to pull some unique things out of you. But do a lot of people have a misunderstanding of what love in a relationship is? This word love, it's big. It's very small, right? 4 letters, but it's big in depth, big in meaning. But is there a lack of understanding of what real love in a relationship? You don't love your spouse like you love cookies. You don't love your spouse like you love the Tampa Bay Rays. And I think so many people maybe get caught up in like the love of a relationship is just the emotion absent of the actions, that verb kind of approach, right? Like we got to be doing things to be loved. So in your experience, or do you think that a lot of people just have a misunderstanding of what real love is supposed to be?
Oh, absolutely. we'll very plainly we'll classify love as a feeling, which is true. Love is a feeling, but it's a lot more than that. And I'm not here to say like it's a spiritual experience, whatever. Like, sure, it's that also, but if we're just looking at it a lot more logically and objectively, and yes, mathematically, love is a process. And this is what we detach ourselves from, is there are things that go into building love, there are things that go into maintaining love, and there are things that go into growing love. And we forget about this. We become very passive to the receiving love. That's easy. What do you need to do to receive love? Diddly squat. So we get very accustomed to, we will coast in the relationship because, yeah, we're receiving love. I'm done. I don't need to do anything else. Couldn't be further from the truth. That's like you build a fire. Now you are receiving warmth. Here's the problem. If that's all you do, what's going to happen to the fire?
I don't want to push you, but maybe challenge something that you just said there, because I think in order to receive love from another, we have to love ourselves. And I think that's so I work with men that struggle with pornography addiction. I think we talked about that before jumping in. And a lot of these guys I can see are struggling to accept love from others because they've reached a point where they don't even, it's not that they don't love the person that they are. They don't even like the man that they've become. And if you don't like the version of yourself, you're obviously not going to love yourself. And that's going to create an environment where I don't think you can receive love from anybody else. Would you say I'm accurate in that assessment?
That would be like a step further of, which is sad because it's so common, but that would be like a step further because it's like you built the fire and then you step away. So you're not receiving the warmth, but the fire is still consuming itself. At some point, the fire is going to die out, and you didn't do anything to feed it. You didn't even stick around to receive the warmth. So what was the point? You just sabotaged the whole thing that you built, which was wonderful. You sabotaged the whole point of it because you removed yourself from it when it was important, when it mattered. And there's a big conflict here with feeling love and making someone feel loved, that it's such a frequent common thing. For instance, we'll hear about love languages, and a love language is how you feel that someone loves you. So if your wife is doing whatever your specific love language is, then you are going to feel that she loves you. This is really important. And we could say, oh, yeah, so it's in the spouse's hands to do the right thing, to use the right love language so that you feel loved. It's not on me, it's on them. That's a very passive way of looking at it. That's a very victim way of looking at it. My spouse should do it, not me. It's like, no. What happens when we integrate within ourselves all of our insecurities and our traumas and our all of the shit that we've like been building up throughout our lives? We pack it into a backpack. We carry it around proudly sometimes. And then what happens is we get into a relationship with all of this baggage, really stinky baggage, and we are going to bring all of that damage. And we are now going to say, it's your responsibility, you fix that. No. When we take care of our own shit, when we take care of our own baggage, when we are the ones like cleansing ourselves, like internally, emotionally, psychologically, automatically your love language stops mattering that much. You become a lot more open to all of them. You're still going to receive and you're still going to prefer a specific one or two. But if, for instance, gifts isn't your cup of tea, when you receive a gift, it's still going to go like, wow, I feel special right now. You stop being so picky because the way your brain works, your brain is a filter machine. It's like we're fairly familiar now with filters from like Snapchat and Instagram. So most people understand the concept of a filter. The brain is doing the exact same thing all the time. Most people are going to have a black and white filter. Everything in life is very dark. There's no color to anything. And so it doesn't matter. Like you could be showing them a beautiful landscape and a beautiful everything, and they can't really see it because most of it is like really dark shades and there's barely any contrast. The picture in itself is wonderful. The filter is really bad. And the filter it's not the landscape's fault that your filter is off. It's your device, which in our case, it's our device. So we have our own filters of things based off of the stuff that we've been carrying. Oh, we've had a bad breakup when we were 13 from our first girlfriend. Oh, my parents, they had a really crappy relationship and they got divorced. Like, we are going to bring all of these negative experiences. We're going to carry a lot of, and this is something that I'm seeing constantly now with, red pill movement and all of this stuff. There's so much contempt now for the opposite gender. This goes both ways, but, speaking to men here directly, there's so much, it's women's fault. Or women are saying that it's men's fault. It's like, who cares? You're not going to change the opposite gender by complaining about them. Like, you want women to love you, stop blaming them for everything. That's not an accurate approach. So we need to take a lot of responsibility first and foremost. Like, that's something that I staunchly believe in, is you take responsibility for absolutely everything, bar none. Then from that standpoint of taking all the responsibility, now automatically you are going to have to take responsibility over what's going on in your own mind, over the little voices that you have that are saying like, maybe if she did this, like, that's bullshit. Don't listen to that. That's cope. That's, I don't want to look at what I'm doing wrong. And it's way easier and way more comfortable to say, wouldn't it be nice if she was doing things better? Better how? Did you even communicate that to her? And if so, how? Is that something that even needs to be communicated because it's coming from a place of pettiness?
I really love this whole frame that you're kind of setting here. Like, full transparency. I didn't get a chance to do tons of research on your work, but I'm familiar with how you kind of approach this. But I didn't think that we were going to get into the personal responsibility conversation within the first 10 minutes of today's podcast.
I'm amazed it took me 10 minutes.
I love that we're there. So speaking to the men out there right now, because that's going to be the vast majority of our audience, you've reached a point where maybe you feel disconnected from your wife. The guy's living in a victim state, right? It's everybody's fault except his. What's a first, second kind of step that somebody can take to, I know, take responsibility, but if we can get maybe even a little bit more tactical, if there's a way to even do that? How do we go from recognizing this disconnect is my fault, my responsibility? Like speak to the men to take that responsibility if we can.
Oh, I love that. There's two big components with everything, and it's essentially going to be your mindset and your skill set. And they're two legs that we need to walk on. We don't want to hop around on just one of these. Some people, they may develop a lot of competence, a lot of skill set, but they lack the mindset. So they're going to take all of the skill sets that they've learned and developed, and they're going to blame the spouse. Very bad, not going to be conducive to any good results. And we have the opposite end of the spectrum. We're going to have a lot of men who they have all the mindset, and then they lack the skill set. And they are also going to suffer because they're going to be perpetually working on themselves. They're going to be taking responsibility for everything, but they're just going to be taking blame because they're forgetting the other leg, which is skill sets and competence. If we are taking responsibility, then we need to learn how to do things differently and how to do things better to produce better results. And this is the question that I'm like always asked, is the whole like, but can we really change how someone else feels? It amazes me how that is the question that someone asks, because, well, everything else, we have the common sense to know that your success is your responsibility. Like with a fitness, if you want to get fit, who has a say in how fit you can get? If you want to have success in business, or let's use your podcast, if you want to have a successful podcast, who has a say in how successful your podcast can be? But then when we take this to the relationship, who has a say in how successful your relationship can be? We go, my wife does. Wait a second. Something feels very wrong here. And now we could say, oh yeah, but that's because there's two people in the relationship. It's not just you. Well, neither is your podcast. Your podcast is you and your team, but I'll lump them all in just you. You, your audience, and your guests. You're not in control of your audience. You're not in control of your guests, but you are in control of your podcast. How does that work? Well, two things. One is there's the mindset, because you started, you failed, I'm sure. If you're human, you probably did. And you failed a lot. And it was the mindset of, taking responsibility, staying in the race, and preserving through the challenges and the difficulties that lended you to then develop the competence, the skill sets, to become better at interviewing, to becoming better at marketing the podcast, becoming better at like all of these components, these additional things that go into the business of a podcast. We don't go, yeah, my podcast isn't being very successful. My audience sucks. Like, we don't do that. That's not
I would
going to
never
help
say
in
that
any
about any of
way.
you guys. I would never say that about anybody out there. We love you guys. Every single one of you. You're perfect. You're amazing. Thank you.
Which, just to point this out, this just highlights that Frank has the right mindset. But this is what people are doing in the relationship. It's like, my relationship isn't working. My audience, my wife, is upset at me. She doesn't like me. It's her fault. That makes no sense. Like, if you have a crappy podcast, then you need to produce a better podcast. If the guests are taking the show in a different direction that isn't going to be adding a lot of value to your audience, then that's your skill set as an interviewer to come in and take things into a better direction. So it's way easy to go like, yeah, my spouse, they are the ones who are responsible. They are the ones who should change. Here's the thing. We need to look at first our mindset. Are you taking responsibility, or are you blaming? Are you whining? Are you, even if you're not whining verbally to someone else, are you whining to yourself? Because that's the first person you whine to. You're going to whine a lot to yourself. Like, oh, she doesn't understand. She always does this. Generalizations, the always and never, cut those out of your vocabulary. They always suck. See what I did there? The mindset being cemented and you learning to develop that, you can even borrow from where you have good mindset. Like, if in business, if you're a go-getter and you're always like on top of things, then perfect. All you need to do is take the same mindset, bring it into the relationship. If in your fitness, you are like, you're at the gym at 5 a.m. every morning, you spend 3 hours in the gym and you're always like pumping hard, it's like, wherever you are in the zone, bring that to the relationship, because it's the same thing. It's going to require different skill sets. You can't approach your relationship the same way that you approach, pumping iron at the gym, but the mindset is the same. The mindset is, something's wrong, I need to fix it. Something's wrong, I need to fix it. Something's wrong, I need to fix it. Very, very repeatable. Then developing the skill sets. That's where I see a lot of people struggle, because when we talk about like podcasts, or if we talk about success in business, we talk about like marketing, sales. These are the skill sets that if you want to be successful in business, that you would need to develop, or whatever your business is. If you are a doctor, then your practice of medicine, et cetera, et cetera. So there are specific skill sets that you need for whatever the job is. If you are approaching a relationship with no skill sets, then you are not going to be able to be good at relationships, period. And the problem is, no one's teaching the skill sets that we need in relationships. You go to school, the best thing that you're going to learn in school for your relationship skill set is probably doing like group assignments and things of that nature. That's as close as you get. And that's nothing. But then you graduate, you start meeting someone, you date, you fall in love, you raise a family, suddenly things start going not so well. Why did you expect to be an expert at something that you never learned?
I've never heard somebody talk about it through this lens, and I love the importance of understanding the skill set side of things. That's, I've been a junkie and advocate, a consumer of personal growth, self-development content for close to 2 decades now. I'm 40 years old. I started reading Tony Robbins, started reading the Zig Ziglars, the Think and Grow Rich, the How to Win Friends and Influence People in my late teens, early 20s. So it's 20 years of this journey down personal growth and self-development. And when you begin to have success in the corporate world, and then you succeed in bodybuilding, then you succeed in entrepreneurship, and then you overcome a struggle with pornography, you see these consistencies, 250 plus episodes now. There's these universal success principles that can be applied to business, fitness. Now we're talking about relationship, right? You mentioned the skill sets and the mindset. The mindset's going to create that frame, that lens at which we see the world through. You talked about a couple skill sets that are needed to make a podcast successful, right? Marketing, communication, how to carry a conversation, how to know when to let the guest talk, how to know when it's my turn to speak, how to make sure that it's entertaining as well as the same time of valuable. We're talking about the need for these skill sets in a relationship that are never taught. So I don't think most people actually understand what the skill sets even are. What skill sets does a man need to succeed in a relationship and in a marriage?
This is the jackpot right here, because knowing what the skills are automatically sets you up for far greater success than anything else. Because with the mindset, like you were saying, the mindset that you need for bodybuilding or corporate or podcast, it's the same principles, the principles of success as you were referring to it. With skill sets, every skill set's different. And when it comes to relationships, there's mostly going to be three key areas of skill sets. The first is, and this is the one that everyone wants to skip, so I'm going to preface by saying that this is one of the most important ones, and that you should absolutely not skip over this one, and that no matter how, as I say it, you're going to think, oh yeah, I'm pretty good at that. No, you're not. Just assume that you're not, and take this very, very seriously. The very first skill is understanding yourself. How well do you know yourself? And how well are you capable of overcoming your own thought processes? Because people are like, oh, yeah, no, I got that. I've been in my head for the past however long you've been alive. Well, what have you been doing with the time that you've been in your head? Because most people don't pay attention to their thoughts. They don't pay attention to how their thoughts happen, how their thoughts are going to create patterns, and how they're going to be responding to patterns. They think that they're in control of their thoughts, and they're not. Their patterns are in control of their thoughts, and they're being controlled by their thoughts. There's a big difference. An addiction to pornography is a great, well, addiction in general, but with you all just refer to pornography. That's a great example. Like if someone is operating from a place of addiction, for instance, pornography, what's going to happen in their brain is they're going to think, oh yeah, no, I decided that I wanted to watch pornography. No, you didn't. You gave in to something, but that pattern was coming from someplace else. There was a deeper need. There was damage that was causing a need that the only way that you found that you could fulfill that was by watching pornography. And because you never thought enough about what caused the pattern in the first place, you only had the one response, which was pornography. When we go into, oh, hold on, this is my pattern. I random examples here, but let's say, oh, I watch pornography when I'm bored. It's like, yeah, that's the logical answer. But we could go way deeper. When you're bored, what do you feel? Because when you're bored, you're alone with your thoughts and your feelings. Well, I feel uncertain about the future. I feel scared. So, okay, so now pornography is no longer just entertainment. Now it's an avoidance mechanism that you're running away from something. Interesting. And we can do this with everything. When you argue with your wife, why are you arguing? That's because she misplaced the ketchup. Again, I suck with examples. These are always going to be like very, very honestly entertaining. But like, oh, she misplaced the ketchup. So I yelled at her so that she learned. It's like, that's a really poor excuse. Let's be honest. Why was it? Could it be maybe because you couldn't find the ketchup, and because of that, you felt a lack of control, a lack of power, and that's what scared you, and then you lashed out? There's deeper meaning to everything. And when we look at our thoughts and our behaviors and our emotions as patterns, and we start patternizing our own thoughts, and we start like listing them out as like, well, I did this. Why? What was I thinking? What was I feeling? And then call yourself out. No, no, no. What was I really feeling? Because you're going to lie to yourself. You're going to want to stay very much in the surface level. It's like, oh, I was watching porn because I was bored. Nope. Go deeper. And then take it like another 3 or 4 layers deeper. Get really good at getting really inside of yourself, because your relationship is going to be the byproduct of your behaviors, how you are acting in your relationship. If you don't know yourself and you don't know why you do the things that you do, how on earth are you ever going to change it?
Yeah, I love that. So first skill set, understand yourself, know your thoughts, understand your patterns. I would assume at this point, this junction in the game, understanding the relationship environment that we were raised in plays a massive role as well in creating our own patterns. This was something that kind of came to the realization for me around 2019. I spent my entire adult life chasing being this man opposite of who my father was. I love my dad. We have an amazing relationship. Spoke with him last night, probably see him again this week. So we have an amazing relationship. So I'm not here knocking my father, but I saw a lot of things that he did inaccurate. And I just as how he lived his life, how he chased success and different things. So through my 20s and 30s, I was like, I want to be the opposite of him, opposite of him, opposite of him. And then I had a relationship in my mid 30s where the girl was like, when you're stressed and when you're not in full control, you're the exact way that your father acts. That pattern had been imprinted on me from this big, from the time that I was an infant. So it was a part of understanding ourselves. Should we go back and think about the environments of the relationships that we were raised in and try to see some consistencies in how we show up in relationships as well?
Absolutely. I will say one thing though, be careful, because that will trigger a very slippery slope of, oh yeah, I'm like this because of my dad. And now you're back in the victim mindset. It doesn't matter.
The victim mindset.
Yeah. Okay. You're like this, like you learned this pattern from your dad. That's fine. It doesn't matter where it came from. Like, we want to recognize where it came from in the sense of like, oh, look at that. But don't get overly attached, because then you're complaining to your dad like, oh, it's your fault that I suck at relationships. Like, how's that going to help?
Yeah, and that's not where I was going to say this is going to enable you to be a victim or pass off the responsibility, because as we said, it's still on us to change all this. I agree 100% that our life is, the outcomes of our life are 100% our responsibility. So we have the first, because I think you said there are 3 key areas of skill set. So number 1 being understand yourself. What's number 2?
Second one is understanding your spouse, because just as you are really complex, so is your spouse. And the main error that I will see people just slamming into time and time again is they will take what their spouse says at face value. Your spouse will say, I hate your guts. What do you think? Oh, she hates my guts. Your spouse will say, I love you, but I'm not in love with you. What do you think? Oh, she doesn't love me. Your spouse will say, I need time, or I need space. Oh, I should, fuck off out of here. Like, all the things that they say are a representation of how they've been able to rationalize their feelings and how they've been able to vocalize them. They are not what is going on inside of them. Because just as you have all of these layers of complexity, that the real reason that you're doing something is like 3 or 4 layers deep, so is theirs. They're only going to be communicating from the top shallow layer. And if we stay there, then it's the same thing with, earlier with, I was watching pornography because I was bored. No, layers deep. Your spouse says, I hate your guts. No, layers deep. It could mean, I'm really hurt. I had this expectation and you broke it, and it was really damaging. It hurt me, my feelings, and also I am struggling now to have hope for a positive future in which we are able to move past this, and I'm able to have the vision that we'd set out to build. I no longer feel that that is possible. There's a lot of complexity there. We can't just stay with, I hate you.
Going the layers deeper, understanding that everything that we're saying is due to the byproduct of these patterns, and understanding your spouse. These should be conversations and things that's speaking to even the non-married guys right now, the guys that are maybe in committed relationships or even potentially single guys that are thinking about getting into relationships. Like having these thoughts and conversations earlier on is going to save you from having that wake up call where it all kind of slaps you upside the head one day, right? So at what point in a relationship should guys start thinking about understanding themselves, understanding their spouse or their future spouse?
I mean, you and I aren't dating, and I've been doing this with you since we've started talking. Like, this isn't a save this for your spouse. No, your spouse is the NBA. You don't learn to play basketball in the NBA. Like, practice this with everybody. Be obsessive about it, so that when you do this with your spouse, you're already good at it.
Got it. Okay. So this is more of a skill set for relationships that'll lead you to getting to that ultimate championship or the NBA using your example. Got it.
The spouse is the boss level. Work your way up.
Yeah. No, that's great. So the third one then, because we have to understand yourself, understand your spouse. What's the third area of skill sets?
Third is understanding how communication works, because with communication, we tend to think, and especially men are guilty of this, communication, a lot of men are going to assume that it means an exchange of information. No. Communication is how your software is going to be interacting with her software. And that means that there's going to be a lot that what you say is going to influence her. What you say is going to be distorted by her. And there's going to be different languages that we're using. You're going to, to kind of geek out on this, you're like Apple communicating with Android. It doesn't connect. It isn't capable of speaking the same language, even though you have the same programs running in it. You have a document with the same words in it. But the two operating systems aren't capable of communicating with one another. And that's us. That's us in relationships. You have your brain, and you've had your brain for however long you've been alive. You're very used to your brain working the way that it does. You assume that your wife's brain works the same way as yours. And you assume that the things that you are thinking and feeling, that it should be obvious to her. Women do the same thing. They'll just do it in a different way. They'll have the same expectations. They'll have the same things that they wish that you would understand and you don't. And then they get frustrated. And then we could go, oh yeah, so it's her fault. It's her responsibility. She should learn how to communicate better. No. The whole communication, everything is the marriage between you as an entity and her as an entity. It's how well are you able to translate what she's saying, and how well are you able to then translate what you are saying to her so that she understands it, and that it is producing the relevant, and this is the most important part, it is producing the relevant emotional impact that it should. Because it's not just about she needs to understand. That's very small potatoes in the realm of communication. People are like, oh, she needs to understand how upset I am about this. Like, that's really not important. If it was she did something that you were upset by and that you want her to change the behavior, you telling her how upset you are is not the most productive way of changing her behavior. You understanding why she did it, and for instance, you getting her to realize why what she did was not helpful, that is way more powerful, and that is way more long lasting in the behavior changing landscape than you just making her feel that you're disappointed in her. So the skill set of getting her brain to respond to you in a specific way, that's what the third skill set is. And we need steps 1 and 2. We need to know her brain really well. If you want to be able to hack the computer, you need to be able to understand the computer really well. And you need to understand yourself, because like you're the one who's sending the signals. If you don't understand your own thoughts and patterns, your own behaviors, then you're not going to be able to translate those so that they are received by the other computer. But it's really, really down to this. It's not just the exchange of information. That's negligible in communication almost. What we really want to do is, how do you have the right impact in the other person's brain?
Do you ever have anybody push back to you, Andre, and say you're way overthinking this? Love, relationship, success in a marriage has nothing to do with how our brains fire or receive certain information. Like, it's all in the heart. And when it's the right person, you know it's the right person, and it's all just going to kind of supposed to just kind of work itself out. And if I'm not feeling this certain type of way, maybe I'm just not with the right person. Like, do you ever get people that say you're just way overthinking and analyzing all of this love relationship stuff?
Before they learn my system, yes. And then they change their mind. It's so fascinating. Because the way, let's bring this back to the whole, your podcast. Oh, you're over analyzing everything. Your podcast, you put your message out there, and then if it resonates, it resonates. And if it doesn't, it's not the right audience, and you should just move on until you find the right one. It's the exact same thing. It goes back to like, no, you have to take responsibility. And the whole love is magical and it's up in the air and the stars aligned. That's just another way, that's a fancy way really, of a more poetic way of saying, I have no clue what's happening. I have no idea how to create love. So I'm just going to go, Jesus, take the wheel. And that's not going to empower you to, for instance, produce love in your life. Because even if you're like, yeah, you're not happy with whoever the current woman that you're with is, and you want to move on, hey, totally fine, man. You do you. Like, you know your life better. But you are going to have a next relationship. And if you don't understand how love is created, you're going to be in the same boat of needing it to be based on luck. Are you going to get lucky? Maybe. The problem is you are dependent on luck. And to me, that's a problem. Because when we look at the things that make people fall in love, I like to refer to this as switches. Um, I wrote all of these in my book, the Save Your Marriage Alone book. Um, there are switches in the brain that we flip that get your spouse to fall in love. And these switches are going to be different for everyone. But we don't know that they're there. So the first time you meet your wife, and before you're dating, obviously, you meet her and you start feeling a few things. Now, what you don't know is that you have switches and she has switches, and just by happenstance, you are flipping each other's switches. And then you go, oh, wow, this is magical. The stars aligned. We are in love. Yes, you are, but it happened for a reason. Switches got flipped. And the other woman that you were with before your wife, I mean, she may have flipped a few, but she didn't flip all of them, not like your wife did. Same with your wife. She met other men before, but they weren't able to flip the same switches. And the thing is, none of you in this whole equation here, none of you knew about these switches. So everything was happenstance, everything was luck. How lucky do you think that you need to be for two people to flip each other's switches? It is rare. How many people have you met before you met your wife? So when we take this lens through like observing, just honestly, it's more of a philosophy of life that is just applicable to relationships. The whole, taking responsibility for everything and understanding success. In this case, is understanding success in a relationship. When we take the approach of being responsible for everything, we require the skill set. And one of these big skill sets is, yes, understanding what it is that is going to cause your spouse to fall in love with you. Your wife is going to have switches. We understand what those are. We understand how to flip those. And then, bam, like magic. And I'm using for the people who are just listening to the recording, I'm using the air bunnies here. Um, there's going to be this like magical effect of, wow, I love this person. And it's not that simple. There's a whole computer process that was happening in the backstage. If we understand that, now suddenly your spouse is going to say, yeah, I love you, but I'm not in love with you. And instead of apocalypse, you go, oh, okay, let me just bust out my switches then. And you're able to fix the relationship because you're not dependent on luck. You're not dependent on, for instance, if she meets someone else and, oh, this guy flipped one switch that you never did. I'm like, fuck, what do I do? Easy, you flip them back.
What does it mean when somebody says like he's changed or she's changed, right? And I'm assuming this is going to be tied to some of these switches, right? Like we're intentional in the dating process. We're trying to, win the attraction over. As men, we're maybe playing the courting game. Women, they're putting their best dress on. They're taking care of their makeup. They're getting their nails done. And then it's like we get to this point. I'm not speaking from experience, but I've seen this and I've witnessed this and I've heard so many people talk about this. Like you get into the marriage and it's like, we've won the race, right? We've won the game. Like I've got the ring, we've secured everything. And then you stop kind of like taking care of yourself. And I think Tony did a great example of saying, hey, no, that I do is actually the start line, not the finish line, as so many people see it. But then you hear people once in their relationship, he stopped taking care of himself, or she stopped taking care of herself, or, oh, he's changed. What are they actually speaking at or speaking to when they're using these type of phrases?
So there's a big difference between who you are and how you are perceived. And we don't think about that. We just assume. So we are in a relationship, early stages, we're dating. You are, you phrase it as putting your best self forward. That's a wonderful way of phrasing it because you are going to be very intentional. And this is almost like a scary statistic, but generally speaking, what's going to happen is the best interaction, the most effort that we will put into interactions, I just shouldn't say the best interaction, the interaction that we will put the most effort into is the first date. And it's all downhill from there.
It's crazy, bro. It's so crazy to think about that, but it's so true.
So we go through this process, the courtship process. We are taking the person that we are and we are exuding it. We are demonstrating it to the best of our ability. We are showing our best. But we are not a fixed thing. We are a range. We are going to oscillate. We're going to have ups and downs. We're going to have a lot of diversity within us that in the courtship we kind of ignore. We'll be like, that part of me sucks. Let me keep that one at home. And we'll go on the dates. We'll do the whole, I'll show my best face and I'll do my best everything. And what we're doing in this like wooing thing is we are going to be making her feel a specific way, and we are going to be making her see us in a specific way. And those two are the same thing. How she sees us and how we're making her feel are the exact same thing. So at some point, she's going to go, yeah, I can't quite place my finger on it, but something's changed. There's something missing. There's something lacking. And what she doesn't know is that what's lacking is the way that she feels. But remember that what she feels and how she perceives you are the same thing. So how's she going to phrase that? You've changed. You may be the same person, but you're not flipping the right switches anymore. You've coasted, you let yourself go, whatever. And so the specific things that she needs to feel to fall in love, she isn't. Her response to that, the way that she's going to translate that, the way that she's then going to communicate that to you is you've changed. And of course, men are going to be really confused by that because, like, I've changed how? Oh, hold on, let me go back to who I was in my 20s. I'll start working out, I'll work extra hard, and I'll do all of these things. And that's great. You absolutely should. Those are good things, generally speaking, for you to do. The problem is, those specific things weren't the things that got her to fall in love with you in the first place. The way you treated her was, the attention that you paid to, she painted her nails a different color and you noticed, or that you remembered a specific detail about what happened at work for her 3 weeks ago, or these little things that in my hypothetical case, so like no one take away from this that this is what you should be doing with your wife specifically. This is a broad general example and everyone's different. But in my hypothetical example here, let's say that these were the switches that needed to be flipped. Well, now I'm going to be doing all the things that I thought I was when I was in my 20s and we were dating. I'm working out, I'm working harder, I'm doing all of these things. But the things that I was doing in the relationship back then, I'm not anymore. And the sad thing is, most men don't remember what they were doing when they were dating. And so when you tell them this, they're like, what did I do? I remember we had sex in this one place and that was awesome, but how did we get there?
I'm sorry. Oh man. Yeah, you you work with a lot of guys, I can tell. But what I'm hearing you say, man, is this is when you hear, certain dating coaches or relationship coaches, just men, men in general say, continue to pursue your wife. Like, you're not saying, like, in the beginning stages of dating, like, present a lesser version of yourself. Like, you still want to go out and show your best. You still want to recognize the change in her hair, recognize that she's got a new dress on. Like, you still want to do all these things, but you got to create those same moments even after the marriage. And that's where, like, the pursuit of your wife, continue to date her, continue to treat her like it is the first date. Like, how can you replicate a first date every single week or every single month with your wife? Is that kind of the aim?
If you think of it that way, that's very unsustainable because, like, oh yeah, let's say you're practicing for a run. You need to break your record every week. You're not going to do that. It's just not sustainable. You're not capable of, and there's going to be physical limitations. You're going to have bad weeks that you're not going to be able to perform. And if that's your level of expectations, then you're screwed because you're not going to be able to fulfill. And
But you're still going
to
to show up every week
but
and
you're
train.
still gonna, yes, exactly. You still show up, you still train, you still do your best. And if for whatever reason you're not capable of doing better than you did last week, then are you still doing your best today? Your best today is not always going to be the same, but it should always be 100% of what you're capable of doing today.
In the moment. And that's where a lot of guys or couples in general, like, once you get married, house, kids, responsibilities, mortgage payments, bills, it's like the dating and the relationship part of the marriage gets pushed way down the end of priority. And it's like, no, it doesn't have to be magical candlelight, riverside walk, all that great stuff, but intentionality of intimate time together, even if it's just, hey, we're going to put the kids down and we're going to do a picnic in the backyard or something very small, but it's the intentionality of the time and effort is what's most important.
Something very simple that if you are at this place with your wife, and you can do this with your wife based off where you currently are, something very simple that everyone can do, or almost everyone, is, let's say you put your kids to bed and you have 30 minutes, just 30 minutes. It's nothing. Don't say that you don't have time. 30 minutes is nothing. 30 minutes with your wife sitting on the couch with a glass of wine. Yeah, you can do a picnic in the backyard, give it a little bit of an extra flair every once in a while for sure. But it doesn't need to be the extravagant thing. It doesn't need to be the romantic thing necessarily. It just needs to be intimate in some way. And just 30 minutes to listen to each other's day, that will do wonders for the relationship. And it's very low effort. But people forget to do this. I think it was Jim Rohn who said that the easiest things to do are the easiest things not to do. So true. And this is an example. We to maintain a happy and healthy relationship, we need to exchange a minimum of 100 words per day. That's nothing. 100 words is the bare minimum, and you can have a happy and healthy relationship. So if you have a busy day, and if you're in a more stressful time, your quota is 100 words. You can do that. What you can't, or you shouldn't do, is, oh yeah, let me make it up tomorrow. Because that's going to become the next day and the next day. And then 6 months have gone by and she's feeling really alone and she's feeling really resentful now. And now you're going to, now at this point, when she's resentful, now you're going to go, oh yeah, let's talk about your day. And she's going to be like, I don't care. I don't want to talk about my day with you. You suck. I hate you. Go die in a ditch. And if you're listening to the surface level, you're going to be like, oh, okay, fine. I give up. Let me go away.
Is there a point then where the word she's saying is what she means? And it's not this, there's layers and layers deeper. You understand what I'm saying? Like, we've been saying, hey, is there one point where like it's just reached the end and it is legit? And how do you kind of know the difference between it's a trigger, it's a warning sign for things that are layers deeper, or I've reached the ultimate point where it's just, we've reached the end of the road?
Women tend to think very highly of their ability to communicate, and they think that they are really good with emotions. Now, I will say this, women are much better with emotions than men are. But women are not as good at emotions as they think they are. And I will see this constantly, because I work with women as well. And I'll hear this from them and I'll see this from them. And they will think that they are communicating right, that they are being very clear, that the thing that she was meaning to communicate was very apparent and very straightforward, and it is not. There is going to be a difference between the things that you should ignore and the things that you should pursue. So, for instance, if your wife says, I want a divorce, there's a very high likelihood that she means it. But there's still a lot of layers of depth to that. Why? Where is this coming from? And then what happens is, okay, I don't know where this is coming from. Let me ask, why do you want a divorce? Because I hate your guts and I don't love you anymore and I deserve to be happy. Well, shit, what do I do with that? There's layers and layers and layers. It's very difficult for people, human beings, to speak about what is true to us, about what is like really vulnerable and deep. Because that is so far removed from what we are then able to process and what we're able to say. Your emotions are going to be happening in your thalamus. And the words that you are speaking are coming out of your Broca's area, which is where we process speech. They are not the same. They will kind of communicate, but there's a lot of distortion that we don't think about. But there's a lot of distortion that happens in between them. And so she's going to say stuff. Your job is to, first and foremost, not take that super seriously. Like, you take the intention seriously, you take the emotion seriously, but you don't take it as definitive. If she's saying that she wants a divorce, it's serious. That you take seriously. What you don't take seriously is there's no hope. She's going to tell you, there's nothing you can do to change my mind. That one you can safely ignore, because she doesn't know. What she's saying is, I'm not going to change my mind based off of what I'm feeling and thinking right now. The whole point of changing her mind is you're going to change what she's thinking and feeling. That's kind of like saying, oh yeah, I will never like pumpkin latte. Have you tried it? No. Maybe if you had, then you would realize that maybe it's kind of nice and you'll develop a taste for it. But this is the same thing. She hasn't been exposed to the things that will change her mind. So she can't say that she won't change her mind. But a lot of men will get really stuck with that. Oh no, but I already asked her and she said that she's not going to change her mind. So that doesn't mean anything. It just means that where she's at right now, she has no hope. That's what it means.
Talk to me about your book, Save Your Marriage Alone. I think that, if a guy is at a point where maybe, the last bit we were just, speaking to is kind of his current reality. I think this is where a book like yours can kind of come in as like a practical guide in the toolkit that he would need to, because it's Save Your Marriage Alone, right? Which kind of sounds counterintuitive, right? It's like marriage is two people. How am I going to do it all on my own? So talks about the book, kind of, who's it for, the origin, and kind of what somebody can expect to get out of it, and where they can pick it up. I know you guys have a great offer on the book right now as well. So kind of talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, the whole purpose of the book was there's so many people who struggle in their relationships and they are at this point that the spouse is, for instance, asking about divorce, asking about separation, that they are adamant that nothing you say or do is going to change my mind. And people get really, really hopeless because there's no help for these people. They go to therapy, they go to counselors, and the counselor is going to say, oh, well, it takes two to tango. If your spouse isn't willing, then there's nothing we can do. And they kind of just pat you on the back and send you back. That's really not helpful. So we wrote the book based off of let's arm people, men and women, but for the guys here, to teach you the skills that you need and how to, for instance, how to assess what are her levers that you need to flip to get her to fall in love, how to assess what is the actual meaning underneath the shallow level that she's speaking at, how do you assess what is reality and what is actually happening, and getting really, really good at these skill sets so that you are able to change how she feels about you. Because the decision to end the marriage, it's not done on a whim. It's a lot of emotional baggage that has been building up. And we can't take what she says at face value of, there's no hope. We have to go deeper. We have to investigate deeper and we have to have the tools. And that's everything that's in the book is like built on this system of how to understand what the deeper meaning is and how to change it. What are the levers that you're going to need to pull to change how she feels? Because if she feels different, she's going to decide something different. And then the entrenchment that the wife has over how resistant she is, how impossibly stubborn she is, how avoidant she is, that you can't talk to her, that you ask her about the relationship and she refuses to even talk about that maybe she'll talk about like kids and logistics, but anything else, she immediately shoots you down. There's a reason why that's happening. And it's understanding these mechanisms of putting up these walls that she will use to protect herself from changing her mind. And how do you break through those? And you give her what she truly needs, not what she's asking for, because they are not the same thing.
Yeah, love that. Love that. And where can the guys find a copy of it?
Yeah, you can either find one on Amazon, but what we are doing as of now for the guys in Frank's podcast and your community is we are giving away free copies, and you can download one at saveyourmarriagealone.com.
Saveyourmarriagealone.com, guys. We'll have that plug down there in the show notes. Pick up a free copy. Anywhere best to connect with you, learn more about your work, your coaching, anywhere you spend your time on any of the social platforms out there, like obviously the book, but if they want to go a little bit deeper into some of your work, where's the best place for the guys to find and connect with you?
Yeah, I'm really antisocial with that. I have a Facebook group. That's the best place because we do like weekly trainings and we have a bunch of resources there and like we go really deep. So you can find us on Facebook at the group Science of Connection. Otherwise, if you want to understand the system and how everything is and understanding the deeper layers of psychology and how you can approach changing her psychology from a place of science and math and something that is reliable, the book.
Got it. Got it. Yep. We'll have all that plugged down there in the show notes for you guys. Amazon, the free copy, saveyourmarriage.com, and the Science of Connection Facebook group. So, Andre, it's been a real honor, man. God, we unpacked so much here today. I know the guys are going to get a ton of value out of this. As we wrap it up, change of direction here with our last and final question. But the title of our show is called The Superhuman Life. So I always love to get the guests' take. So, Andre, as we end today's conversation, how do you define living a superhuman life, and what role, I guess, would a successful relationship or marriage play in living a superhuman life?
Super is by its own design something that is extraordinary, something that is beyond the realm of average. And the pursuit of excellence in itself is one of the most powerful things that we can do. When we look at understanding relationships, I mean, yes, it's going to give you better relationships, it's going to give you better fulfillment in life, all of those things, which all of that is great. And there's a lot of benefit from that directly because, there's a saying, behind every great man, there's a great woman. So true. If you are able to build a relationship that is in itself super, then what you're going to have is you're going to have someone who is going to be boosting you up constantly. You have a challenge at work, your wife is going to be there with popcorns and those cheerleader pom-poms ready to cheer you on. And that's a very different experience than what most men have when they pursue excellence at work and they forget about their home. They're going to have a resentful wife waiting at home saying like, why are you working so much? I don't have that. It's insane, but my relationship, she will encourage me to go work. Like, go and do more things and change more lives because we are so attuned at this level and our values are so meshed together as far as like what we're looking to build. Then when we take, and this is like, to me, this is like even cooler, is when you take the skill sets that you learn from the relationship in itself, you apply it with everybody. Like, you're going to have, at work, you're going to have customers and coworkers. You're going to have in your own family. You're going to be raising the next superhumans. You're going to be raising little supers, and the ability that you have to understand them and communicate with them, that's going to produce better superhumans in the future. The way that you live your life is going to be, everything that we do is relationships. We just don't think of it that way. Finances, that's your relationship with money. Nutrition, that's your relationship with food. Everything is relationships. Customer support, sales, marketing, that's your relationship with your audience. So when you understand relationships really well, it's a very transferable skill and it allows you to go so much further in everything else. Leadership, that's your relationship with the team that you have, the following that you have. So it's essentially, it's understanding and developing the skill set of being liked, being followed, and being able to connect.
Yeah, I absolutely love that, man. Andre, one of the best, I think, answers. We've asked that question over 250 times at this point, and still blown away when I get kind of a unique response to it. But that is so truthful, man. Like, we are relational creatures. Like we're here to be in community. You're not going to do this life alone. You're not going to do anything by yourself. So understanding these core foundational principles for relationships, not just your intimate ones, all of your relationships, even starting with the relationship with yourself, is so key and crucial to living a purposeful, meaningful, peaceful, successful, fulfilling, joyful life. So absolutely love that. Guys, check out Andre, his work, Save Your Marriage Alone. We'll have the book, the link, the Science of Connection Facebook group plugged down there. But bring your wife in, bring your partner, bring your girlfriend into this conversation. Share this with them. Share this with as many people as possible. If you're getting value out of the episodes, as always, you can support us by rating and reviewing. But for Andre, your host, Coach Frank, we love you guys. We'll see you next week.